In this video, we're going to use the Appearance panel to apply multiple graphic styles to an element in order to use it in a pattern. So the first thing we're going to need to do, notice I already have some elements set up. Each of these just has the default style, a white fill with a black one-point stroke around it. This graphic styles work with text, they work with lines, they work with any element that you have in Illustrator. And so the first thing we're gonna need to do is we're gonna need to get two different panels. One of them is the Appearance panel, and the other one is the Graphic Styles panel. Both of those live under the Windows menu. They may live in your palettes on the right-hand side of your workspace, but if you can't find them, they always live under Window. So we're looking for Appearance. Hotkey for that is Shift and F6, and Graphic Styles. Hotkey for that is Shift and F5. In this case, I have mine right over here in my side panels, and I'm just going to pull these out because for this exercise, I'd like to be able to just see them all the time. So appearances are what the artwork looks like. A graphic style is a predetermined appearance. So we'll be able to make new graphic styles. I'm going to make this menu just a little smaller, move it down here. We'll work with that in a little bit. I'm going to start with the star first, and we notice that our star has an appearance of a stroke and a fill. Each has their own opacity, and then there's this bottom opacity. That's the opacity of the entire element. So in this case, I can change the stroke. I can change the color of the stroke. There it's orange, or I can change it, we'll zoom in to just that little stroke there. I can change the width of it. One of the nice things about the Appearance panel is that anytime there is a blue word, that's a linked word, and there's an additional panel of options. So in this case, the word stroke brings up the stroke panel. I can change this stroke to a dotted line or a dashed line. Maybe I just want it to be 3 points for dashes. I can change the cap. So the cap is the end of a line. In this case, I can round it off, or I can have it square out past the end of the anchor point. Or in this case, this is just, it ends at the anchor point. I can do the same thing with corners. I can round off the corners or bevel off the corners. And in a lot of cases, once I have a dashed line, this is no longer the case. I can also decide if that path is going to align to the inside, to the outside, or on the center of the path. So I'm going to put it back on center and make our line dashed. Now the funny thing is that if I select dashed line first, my alignment options, the default becomes center. However, if I do it in the other order and I choose my alignment option first, and in this case we'll set it inside, then I can add the dashed line option and make changes to that, and it gives me those choices. So it's kind of funny because it's one of those things that you have to do beforehand, or it doesn't work as well. These options align the dashes either to the corner or just follow the path. A lot of times if you have something with a lot of corners, it's best to have that aligned to the corner. I can also add arrowheads. In this case, the arrowheads are humongous and my path is pretty small. The arrowheads are determined by the point size, so if I make the point of my line a little smaller, my arrowheads change as well. There are a number of arrowhead options, as you can see. Some of them also include things like scissors. So if you're doing a coupon and you need a dotted line, this would be the way you would do that as well. There's little asterisks. In this case, we're going to go ahead and go back to none. The other option in the stroke dialog box is called the stroke profile, and later in the semester we'll talk about the width profile tool. But I just want to point out to you real quick that this also exists. It's another way to kind of give your element some flavor. So I can change the stroke. One of the cool things about the Appearance panel box is that I can actually make extra strokes. So if we were working in Photoshop and we wanted another stroke, we would need another element. we don't have the ability to do multiple strokes. But in Illustrator we do, and I can very quickly add a stroke to this image, and I can add a fill. Let's give it a cool pattern fill. We'll choose one of the defaults here, and let's choose a couple of fills. I can make a new fill either using the new fill button, or I can just drag the fill down to the new duplicate selected item button. It's just the new button in all of Illustrator. And then these fills and strokes can be rearranged. So let's say I want to go fill, stroke, fill, stroke. If we look at this really carefully, I can see that order does matter, because I have this purple stroke, the brown fill, that pattern fill goes over that, but the orange stroke is on top of the purple fill. Now I will say that this is truly kind of an ugly assortment of things, but I just wanted to show you real quick how you could put those together. One of the other nice things is if you don't like something, you can simply delete it, highlight it, and then click the trash can. And if you want no selection, or if you want to clear the appearance entirely, this little no button will get rid of all of it. So there we have the path with no stroke, no fill, and we're back to normal. This is probably a great time to talk about the Graphic Styles panel, because the Graphic Styles panel installs or applies an appearance to an element with one click. So in this case, the style is called foliage, and by clicking it you can see I have no stroke, but I have two different fills. I can click another one. This one's called Pompadour. These are defaults that come with Illustrator, and I can add those very quickly and get a new style. Here's a blue button style, and the very first one is always the default style. So there's the default style. We're back to the white fill and the black stroke. So let's put something kind of fun on this one. We'll give it an orange stroke, and we'll make that stroke a little thicker. Now, one of the things that happens with Illustrator quite frequently, and I will assure you that it is a little bit maddening, is it's very, very common for you to start making changes to the appearance panel with nothing selected, and then what happens is you've made changes to the appearance panel, but they haven't been applied to anything. So this is where the Graphic Styles panel really comes in handy, because I can use this appearance and make a new graphic style. Notice now I have a graphic style that is this orange outline, so I can select my element and then apply that graphic style. So let's zoom out. We'll take a look at some of our other options here on the artboard. Zoom into this little rounded rectangle. One of the other things I really love about graphic styles, we'll add a stroke to this guy, and let's add a fill. It can just be a color. Let's choose some yellow or some sort of lime green there, and we'll make our stroke a little bit thicker. One of the things that I really love about graphic styles is that not only do these styles include strokes and fills, they can also include opacity. So I can reduce the opacity of just the stroke or the fill. And if I choose the bottom opacity, this is going to affect the entire element all at once. So notice as the number goes down, the entire element becomes less opaque, more transparent. And then as I go back up, the whole thing becomes. So you can operate those individual of each other, independent of each other. The other thing I love is the FX button. The FX button allows you to apply some different effects to your element. So one of my favorites happens to be Scribble, and I love Scribble just because it's kind of fun. In this case I do have this box selected, and there are some defaults, so we can choose childlike, and if I choose preview it's going to show me what that looks like. Now in this case, because I have the opacity layer of the stroke selected, I'm only making this edit to the stroke. And that's okay, we can fix it here in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and play with it, and I think I want sort of a dense scribble. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. When I do that, I now have this scribble option on my stroke. The cool thing about the appearance panel is I can drag that right outside of the stroke, and if I bring it down to the bottom, it'll affect the entire shape. I can apply it simply to the fill if I prefer. Let's get off of that there for a second. By dragging it to the fill, notice it gives me a no sign until I get right over the fill layer. Then when I drop it on there, now I have a solid stroke, but the scribbled fill. And this is a link, so it remains editable in case I decide, oh, I don't really like that, I'd like a different pattern, I want something maybe a little zigzaggier or loopier or more childlike. So that is the appearance panel, or the scribble option. I also have other options like there are some Photoshop effect options. There are also the ability to offset the path, and we'll look at the offset path on this next shape. So this shape is just a pen shape that I drew. We'll go ahead and put our orange style on it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the option. I'm going to be on the stroke to do this. And I'm going to make another one. So we'll make a copy of it. And I'm going to change this stroke. We'll change this one to green so you can see exactly what happens. I'm going to come to offset path, or the FX button and path, and then offset path. And when I do that, it's going to give me some options about how far do I want to offset this. When I click the preview button, you're going to notice that Illustrator makes another path. It outlines whatever I have selected and makes the stroke offset. So that's a great way to add some texture and elements and layers to a design. So we're going to come down here to this text option now. Because text is one of the things that we like to style the most frequently, it's also one of them that's the most difficult. Because if I look at this text and I click on characters, so to start with I'm on the text, but when I double click the characters, that highlights my characters, and that's where the fill is. And if I change the fill to orange, I get a nice orange fill. If I change the fill, now notice I don't have anything selected, and it has picked up my text tool. So I have to have things selected if I'm using character. And if I try and change my text to a gradient, I end up with black text. This is one of the most frustrating things for people working with the appearance panel. The trick with text is that you actually have to have your characters have no appearance. The characters themselves need to have no fill and no stroke. So what you're going to do is then go double click on type, and now you're going to style this. So now I'm going to add a fill, and I'm going to change that fill to the gradient, and now I have gradient text. And if I want to add a stroke, I can do the same thing here. I can change the stroke to green. And another thing we haven't really talked about is you can drag these and rearrange so that your stroke is underneath your fill or your fill is on top, and layer those however you'd like. That is the appearance panel, and that is how you would create an element using the appearance panel for your pattern.